I just appreciate the opportunity. I don't take it for granted. As you can see, I too am passionate about today's youth, and I feel as though that we all have an obligation to not only try to pay it forward, but just to be a participant with intention and be purpose driven as far as trying to push someone else forward. So I was hoping to try to share with the group two things that I think are important when I talk about my culture or things that are important to me that make me different from others, but also connects me to a larger body. And in bringing these things to light, I will hope that the young group kind of understands that we all have things that are unique to our experiences that make us different, but also make us alike. And so us embracing certain things shouldn't be viewed as anything negative, but difference doesn't kind of constitute that. Difference just means just different. And the more people can kind of understand maybe the background, right, to certain things, I think the more appreciation we'll have for one another as unique individuals. So my grandmother's house was the house. So everybody from my family, even if they didn't live there, somehow on Sunday found their way to her house. So on Sundays she cooked like all day. It's like a big dinner. And what I found, that pretty much all the houses on the block I lived in, like whether they had 19 people living in there, or whether they had 6 people living in there, or whether they had 10 people living in there, from about, say, noon to maybe 9 o'clock at night, our street or our block was empty. No one was outside, right? So everybody they were frequenting some residence. But all of my family came to my grandmother's house. And on Sundays, it was be quiet, don't make a lot of noise, don't run or jump up and down, because you're going to upset my cakes that my grandmother made from scratch. She had her towels out on the table and would have the cakes like cooling on over quiet. Like we couldn't go outside, and then we couldn't make any noise in the house. It was just crazy for us. But everyone came there and ate. And so as I would peek out the door, I would realize no one else was outside. Everyone was inside the house. So it was kind of like, this is what we did. Sundays, everybody came to grandma's house, and we ate dinner. And as I got older, I realized that this was kind of like, not a tradition, but this is what Black families in urban Philadelphia did. If it wasn't at your house, it was at one of your relatives' house. Everybody was going to eat on Sundays, right? And it just so happened that it was at the house that I lived in. And the meals were pretty much the same if you went in these houses. She was frying chicken, she was frying gizzards, she was making cakes from scratch. It was macaroni and cheese. It was collard greens with fat back in it. I know that sounds disgusting, but that's the truth. And early in the morning, the house would reek. It would smell so bad. So I would try to get out the house before noon because I couldn't take the smell of this one item she cooked on Sundays. And she would make chitlins, right? And what you may not be aware of is chitlins are the intestines of a pig, right? I couldn't get past the smell, right, at first. So I never ate chitlins. And they would add hot sauce. I mean, it was a whole production, right? And if I smell something to this day, I can't eat it, right? So the other day, real quick, I went to the market. My youngest son, it's just him and I here. And I bought some fish, brought it home. I was gonna fry some rum, grill some chicken. You want some fried fish? Yes. And I go to open the fish, and I could smell it before I started to prepare it, and I couldn't eat it, right? So that's how much of effect that the smell of something could really bother me. But anyway, back to the story, and just bear with me. I'm gonna get to my point. The smell would drive me crazy, right? And I was like, who could actually eat something this disgusting, right? So as I got older, I did a little bit more research, right? And again, this is my culture, right? Where my grandparents were from the South. You know, my mother was, although she was born in Philadelphia, her other 4 siblings that came before her, they were all born in Georgia as well. So my mother grew up eating chitlins, and every Sunday, everybody came to grandma's house and we ate, right? And so this is what we did, right? This is urban Philadelphia in a black household, you know, growing up, say in the early 80s, right? This was part of our culture. And what I found as I got older is that there were a lot of families that looked like me that pretty much did the same thing. Maybe not necessarily made chitlins every Sunday, but they had Sunday dinner, right? And so it was something that I embraced, right? I found out as I got even older that other families didn't do it. I assumed that every family did it, but it was like only certain families, and those families kind of like the participants looked a lot like me, right? So I embraced it, right? Again, it didn't make me any better, any worse, but this is what we did. But the smell of the chitlins made me go back and research why someone would eat the intestines of a pig. So that was connected to the whole, you know, African American culture, the Sunday dinners thing, because back in slavery, Sunday was kind of like the only day where, you know, the slaves felt like they were free, and they got together, right? And they congregated, and that's what they did. That's what food meant. The cooking, the preparing, the sharing of food brought a group of people together who was forced to be in an environment where they were separated and removed from their siblings, and you know all the things. I don't want to bore you about, you know, that period of time in the history of our country, but that's what food meant. On Sundays, we're all going to get together, and fast forward, that carried over even still to this day, right? But the chitlins part was the one thing that was bothering me about the culture. So I dove into it, and really, like, when you had, say, a slave master who was really who ruled with an iron fist, he would only leave the intestines of the pigs for the slaves to eat. So those scraps from all the other parts of the animal that got taken into the good parts of the pig that got taken into the house to be prepared, the scraps were left for the slaves. And as a result of that, they turned it into a delicatessen, and they're resilient. They had survival skills. They figured out a way, right? And so because some people in my family still eat chitlins, right? It's a part of their culture, right? It doesn't make them savages, right? It's just you have to understand the history to really kind of embrace or be aware of the cultural difference, right? So that's what makes some people a little bit different from others, right? The other thing I wanted to share about culture, I think will probably maybe make us feel a little bit more connected, is I went back and studied the culture of hip hop, right? Again, hip hop is the largest genre of music in the world today, right? And it started in April 1973 in Bronx, New York, right? And so hip hop was birthed, right, in a kind of like a recreation room of a housing projects in the Bronx by Kool Herc. And when it really started, it was just a James Brown beat that they just looped the break over and over again, and it just created this rhythm that people wanted to bop to. I know y'all don't say bop, but I'm 47, so right, just ride with me. right? And so, like, what was really hip hop? In its pure form, it talks about like expression and art and music and creating different languages, right, and different rhythms, and to kind of understand, like, again, I have a fifth grader who loves the Baby, and he loves Drake, and he loves Lil Baby and Lord Durk, and there's so many little such and suches to where that, like, his style of the form of music and my style kind of like clash, right, a lot. Like, I came from an era where the form of hip hop was a little bit different from, or a lot different than it is today, right? But to really kind of have an understanding of the culture, right, I went back and read articles on Kool Herc, and to try to get a better understanding of his intent and why the art in itself kind of grew to be what we know it is today. And early on it was you had Grandmaster Flash and groups like that really talking about using hip hop to kind of express their feelings on the injustices that was going on in their neighborhoods, right? Whether it was police brutality, right, or the drug epidemic, and it made me think about some of the things that's going on today. It's like, systemically, it's still elements of the same things they were talking about still going on today, just in different forms. So, for me, like, the culture of hip hop, right, has brought so many people together, right, to where that, you sometimes universal culture, right, if it's embraced by all, you can see it in its purest form. Sometimes a culture may fit only a particular ethnicity, and it doesn't make them better, worse, right, or wrong. It's just what kind of like defines them, because different doesn't mean bad or wrong. It just means different. Like, when you humble your spirit, right, and you walk into a setting because you desire to learn, most of the time cultural differences are a good thing, right? If you have that type of spirit, right, in terms of not necessarily trying to project your beliefs, your views, your ideas, your ways of thinking from a cultural standpoint on someone else, but just saying, you know what, I'm gonna leave myself open to learn. Now, you guys that are participants in 3Point Foundation and putting yourself and being committed to just being around adults that genuinely want the best for you, at some point or another, someone's going to sow into you, and it's going to change your life, whether it's already happened because you are active participant, or somewhere down the line in a conversation when you have to make a decision, right?